DW Africa Link.
It's official. Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, three junta-led nations have left ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West African States. Diplomatic efforts to prevent a breakaway ultimately failed, and on 29th January 2025, ECOWAS had three less countries in its regional bloc. So who takes the blame for their exit? And whose loss is it? That's what's coming up. Stay tuned for an exclusive interview with Ambassador Abdel-Fatau Musa, the ECOWAS Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security. I am Eddie Micah Jr.
Africa Link, every weekday here on DW.
And you are welcome to Africa Link, the podcast connecting you to the stories that matter. So where do I even begin with the split? It all started with a wave of coups in West Africa. Mali was in 2021. Burkina Faso experienced it in 2022, and then Niger in 2023. That led to ECOWAS suspending and sanctioning the three states as a means of forcing them to restore democracy and back to civilian rule. Well, that is yet to happen. The junta-led countries accuse ECOWAS of being a neo-colonial tool for French interests, citing the bloc's support for the CFA franc and lack of sovereignty in decision-making. The three then combined to form the Alliance of Sahel States, a confederation with shared economic and security goals. They have even introduced their own biometric passports. For more on this, my colleague Uweisu Abubakar Idris, DW correspondent in Abuja, spoke exclusively to Ambassador Abdel-Fatau Musa, the ECOWAS Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security.
It was a very sad day for our community of West Africa because the member states that you are talking about, Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger, are founding members of ECOWAS. We have worked together for 50 years. Over the last 50 years, in May to be 50 years, to build a very enviable record in regional integration, in terms of, governance frameworks, in terms of development, infrastructure development, and most of all, solidarity of the members of the 15 ECOWAS member states. So ECOWAS is not just an organization, but a community. Yes, and then a decision taken by heads of state of three countries without even consulting the community, the population, as to whether they want it or not. Right? So this is where we are. At a very critical stage. Yeah.
It was the leaders that decided that they want to exit, not that the people of their countries.
Precisely. It is the leadership of the countries that have decided to pull the three countries out of ECOWAS, not the people. Because there has not been a referendum, in the countries to decide on whether the people want to remain or not, as far as ECOWAS is concerned. So, but that is not the issue. These are details. What I've said that it is a very sad day in our community, and we hope, that in the near future there will be a rethink of this situation, and they will come, together again. We have ECOWAS heads of state did not give any 6-month extension. No. Yesterday was the deadline for the three member states to either remain in the community or to leave.
Yeah, but the 6 months is the transition.
The 6 months is like a grace period. A grace period during which, if the decision is taken for them to come back into ECOWAS, they will automatically be accepted. But beyond the 6 months, if any of the three countries want to rejoin ECOWAS, they will have to go through the process of joining by applying.
So it's not going to be automatic?
It's not going to be automatic. This is what the 6 months is about.
So what does that mean, their exit to the countries and their citizens?
Yes, David, this is why I began by saying that this is a very sad moment. because we've achieved a lot together. If you remember, the ECOWAS Commission also issued a statement trying to extend for the populations of this country privileges that community citizens enjoy, for the reason that their member states are members of ECOWAS community. And that is free movement. Free movement of people, the right to establish in any country of the 15 member states, and then to do business, to go to those countries without a visa. This is something that ECOWAS has achieved over the years. It was one of the very first protocols that ECOWAS signed. So automatically, the citizens of this country will lose that privilege. But the ECOWAS has decided that until further notice, we are still very flexible, allowing for negotiations to continue. You know, ECOWAS has got 2 mediators who are still working with the 3 member states to see whether they can change their mind. So until a certain period in the future, when the heads of state decide otherwise, we are still allowing citizens of these countries to have those privileges, right? But that is for the people. But in terms of the member states themselves, you know that ECOWAS has got this trade liberalization scheme, which allows the member states, to export their commodities to other member states without tariffs, particularly if the products are homegrown or a certain percentage is there. That one is also there. And a whole lot of other, privileges are there. That is number 2. Number 3, it is the question of solidarity. So their withdrawal has actually weakened them, the 3 countries, and it has also weakened ECOWAS. Why do I say so? Because in international relations today, numbers count. Numbers count. So if tomorrow there is a debate at the AU level, African Union level, usually the West Africa will solidarize with each other, support their positions. And with 15 voices, that is a very powerful voice. Today we have only about 12, right? And it is even worse for them because they are now 3 and they don't belong to any other grouping, today. So the spirit of solidarity has also been broken.
But will you say ECOWAS has failed in trying to make sure that these 3 countries didn't leave? And will this be a kind of a thought for ECOWAS to now reconsider her approach in future?
Yeah. First and foremost, we have ECOWAS is governed by rules, right? On democracy, we have the supplementary protocol on democracy and good governance, with a supplementary act that was adopted in 2012 by all the member states, right? And if you are a member and you break those rules, the book has to be thrown at you. And it is very clear that ECOWAS eschews military intervention, in our member states. And before the coup d'etat in Niger, ECOWAS had already agreed with all the countries under military rule about transitional framework. They had all agreed to them that after this period, we are going to hand over. In fact, when Captain Traore overthrew Damiba in Burkina Faso, he promised everybody, the whole world, that he was not going to change the transition framework and that they were going to hand over, right? Okay, ECOWAS might have made probably some miscalculations in terms of the approach, the balance between mediation and threats. Okay.
Or the use of power.
Yeah, the use of force. The use of force and then mediation. Did we allow mediation enough time to work? That is all in the past now. These are all lessons that ECOWAS will have to learn. But ECOWAS, since I think before even the end, before they decided, the three countries decided that they were leaving ECOWAS, ECOWAS had already stood down that option of military intervention. They took their decision to leave ECOWAS on the 28th of January. By then, ECOWAS had already abandoned the option of military, the military option, and mediators were working with them. And since then, ECOWAS have been bending backwards to accommodate them. With the mediators meeting them, ECOWAS has never done anything since then.
So the issue of military was actually a mistake on the side of ECOWAS to even using force initially.
The use of force was not a mistake. The use of force is within the tools that ECOWAS uses to bring back democracy in the member states. It is about the sequencing of events leading to the use of force. You don't begin with the threat of the use of force if you have not exhausted diplomatic overtures. And I think it is the sequencing that is wrong, not the threat of use of force. ECOWAS has often threatened to use force against member states, but they have never used it before. If you look at the history of ECOWAS, ECOWAS threatened to use force against Yahya Jammeh in 2016 in the Gambia. ECOWAS never used force. That alone persuaded him to leave, right? There were other instances like in Guinea in 2009. There was also the possibility against Captain Dadis Camara. ECOWAS never used force.
What are the immediate implications of their exit to ECOWAS countries?
Yes, I have already mentioned some of them. The thing is that in international relations, numbers are important. Okay, that is the first one. Numerically, ECOWAS is now fewer than the 15 member states, which will hold a bigger clout in terms of international bargaining in the international arena. That is the first and visible issue. In terms of economic might, okay, the current GDP and others of these countries compared to Nigeria alone is insignificant. In terms of the economic output, it may have potential. And undoubtedly, there is a lot of potential in the Sahel in terms of natural resources and then all that, right? But when we are talking practically, I think even though trade, intra-regional trade is going to be affected, but their contribution to that intra-regional trade is relatively small. At times less than, all of them put together, maybe less than about 12% of the total, 15%. But territorially, the three countries constitute about 54% of the geographic area of the original ECOWAS, right? So that diminishes the two. Number three, the other main loss is that of solidarity that the community has lived with since, for about 50 years now. Our people are intermarrying, they crisscross borders. There are the same people on different sides of the borders. So that is why ECOWAS decided that in the spirit of Pan-Africanism, in the spirit of African unity, we have to make sure that we build a community instead of an organization. And that is why the free movement of people, intra-African trade, and solidarity, demonstration of solidarity towards any of the countries in trouble has always been at the core of ECOWAS. This has been broken, by their exit.
But these countries, this is one of the reasons they put forward that solidarity, that ECOWAS did not help them in terms of fighting insecurity within their own region, within the Sahel.
Yes. I am not going to debate that. If you remember, these three member states belong to G5 Sahel. Yeah? G5 Sahel, joint force, right? When other ECOWAS member states wanted to join, they rejected them. They turned themselves into a club, within ECOWAS, doing things their own way. There was a barrier to ECOWAS actually engaging fruitfully with G5 Sahel. This began, since the formation of G5 Sahel until its collapse. Countries like Senegal applied to join G5 Sahel. They were rejected. So it was like a club. So if you turn around today and accuse ECOWAS that we did not help.
Will you say that what happens now, it was long planned through the Sahel group which they had? It's like they were planning for this for a long time. They just hatched their plan now that comes to reality.
No, I would not go as far as to say that this is something that they planned. You have to ask yourself whether G5 Sahel was a creation of the member states themselves, or it was something like more imposed from outside, and whether they had the wish. In terms of Mali, I can tell you that because of ECOWAS' attitude towards Captain Sanogo, who staged the coup in 2012, so his interests and those who didn't want ECOWAS to go into Mali coincided, at the time. And then this followed also the election that took place there. So I'm not going to say that this is something that they planned before. But what I will tell you is that there were obstacles put up against ECOWAS by the same Sahelian states. I'm not saying just these three. The Accra Initiative has been created by the coastal countries in order to team up with the Sahelian countries to try to protect their common borders and to prevent jihadist forces from, coming to the coastal countries, right? But it is not working. Is it because the coastal country didn't want to support? No. But today, the reasons go beyond that. So this question of solidarity, and I can assure you that ECOWAS, together with UEMOA, have contributed financially, to these member states in order to acquire equipment in order to fight terrorism. ECOWAS has been very actively supporting these countries in terms of humanitarian intervention. And then, for example, when flooding occurs in these countries, even up till today, ECOWAS lends its support to them, whether in Mali or any other places.
So what measures are you taking now to forestall this escalating happening again, so that you can stop other countries within the ECOWAS from saying, oh, these people have done it, they have succeeded, we can also exit the community and join other groups?
ECOWAS has nothing to prove, even as we speak. ECOWAS is the avant-garde regional economic community in Africa. ECOWAS has achieved a lot in terms of normative framework and in terms of very concrete achievements in the region. So we are not going to sell ourselves. If member states do not see the value of ECOWAS for their membership, it is not ECOWAS' role to convince them to stay in ECOWAS. Yeah, we say ECOWAS is a community. The heads of state have a decisive role in guiding where ECOWAS goes, right? So if a member state then, say that, oh, ECOWAS is not actually fulfilling my expectations, so I am leaving, they should first ask themselves the question, what have been their contribution toward the advancement of ECOWAS, the community? So I don't think ECOWAS has anything to prove. Having said that, it is very important that ECOWAS revisits its modus operandi, its structure, normative and institutional framework against the backdrop of today's world. Right? we are now living in a multipolar environment. We are living in a place where digital explosion, media, social media, misinformation and disinformation, have become part and parcel of our world today. And ECOWAS cannot live using the same methodology that they did during the multilateral era. So ECOWAS itself needs to look at this. That's number one. Number two, ECOWAS has to also look at the future of the region. This region is made up of about 60% young people. It's a dividend that ECOWAS could transform, but the youth have become a problem in the region. Why? Because they are not integrated into the regional integration process, which is a problem. And then we also have to look at partnerships. We have to define okay, we may have values. ECOWAS has made a strategic choice to choose democracy as the value that it lives by. Okay, there are other partners who have the same values, but we need to narrow the gap between values and priorities, in terms of going forward. So these are all some of the things that ECOWAS has to review.
Now, if they decided to come back at any time, even after their exit, after the transition, is there any chance for them to be readmitted?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. What I will tell you is that ECOWAS is built on the spirit of Pan-Africanism. It is about African solidarity. And ECOWAS is of the belief that if you believe in Pan-Africanism, you don't break up organizations that you belong to in Africa. You repair them or you restructure them. You don't throw them away and then splinter Africa.
That was Uweisu Abubakar Idris, our correspondent in Abuja, speaking exclusively to Ambassador Abdel-Fatau Musa, the ECOWAS Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security.
Get the stories that are shaping the continent here on Africa Link.
For many who have been following this development, not much has been said about the implications and impact on these countries and their citizens. My colleague George Ukachi provides some highlights on this.
Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger were all founding countries of the ECOWAS bloc in 1975. All three are currently led by militaries that seized power from civilian leaders. Following the coups, ECOWAS imposed sanctions, and that resulted in strained relations between the bloc and the three member states. But what are the consequences of leaving ECOWAS? Firstly, it may delay the country's return to democracy. ECOWAS tried to push for the early return of civilian governments through elections, but leaving the bloc will likely delay that process. Secondly, it might increase the cost of goods. Leaving ECOWAS could make trade more difficult for the three landlocked nations, making goods more expensive. It could also see visa requirements reimposed for travel. Thirdly, the EU has an economic partnership agreement with ECOWAS. The withdrawal might influence their standing with the EU, affecting trade agreements, development aid, and collaborative efforts on global issues. Finally, an increased Russian influence in Africa. Former colonial power, France has removed ambassadors and troops. Russia has filled the void militarily and has presented an opportunity for Moscow to further expand its presence on the continent. Russia frames itself as a country that never colonized the continent.
Thanks, George, for highlighting that. It is important to add that ECOWAS says its doors remain open to the three countries and urged member states to continue extending membership privileges, including free movement under its passport system. So, what do you think? Please share your thoughts with us on our Facebook page, DW Africa. Listen to us on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts from. Don't forget to click follow and subscribe to our DW Africa YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. This show was co-produced and edited by Isaac Kaleji. Special thanks to Uweisu Idris, DW correspondent in Abuja, Nigeria. And I am Eddie Micah Jr. Thanks for listening.
DW News.
Here are the top